From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Tonight's controversy in Edo PDP as different court orders spring up ahead of the state governorship primary scheduled for Thursday. The Independent National Electoral Commission insists it will obey all court orders ahead of Edo election, gives deadline on submission of candidates' names. Leadership crisis rocking the ruling All Progressives Congress continues, with police deploying officers around the party secretariat to avert breakdown of law and order. House of Representatives grill Foreign Affairs Minister Jeffrey Onyema over demolition of Nigerian High Commission building in Ghana. Lawmakers say demolition is an attack on Nigerian state and goes beyond apologies or rebuilding structure. The Ghanaian president apologizes to Nigeria over the demolition of the Nigerian High Commission building in Accra. Plus, business news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London.
Federal and state governments close to acquiring $3 billion loan from the World Bank to cushion the effect of COVID-19 on the economy.
On sports news tonight, world number one Novak Djokovic becomes the latest tennis player to test positive for COVID-19.
And from Abuja, President Muhammadu Buhari raises concern over decision by ECOWAS member countries to take up the ECO as its official currency, replacing the CFA franc ahead of the other member states.
Today, they began with so much confusion when some court papers came in from a federal high court in Port Harcourt over the governorship election primary of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP. Yet another round of court papers came in later, that is earlier this evening, and it's all about the Thursday delegate election to determine the governorship candidate of the PDP ahead of the September 11 poll. Our political correspondent, Shewa Kimbaloye, guides us through some of the day's happenings over the Edo PDP matter.
It is just few hours before the planned People's Democratic Party's governorship primary in Edo State. The coming into the PDP by the governor, Godwin Obaseki, after resigning from the APC, has raised some dust. One of the aspirants, Mr. Godwin Ekene, has stepped down from Mr. Obaseki. But another aspirant, Honorable Omorege Ogbede Hiama, is not happy with the twist of things. He has gone to court in Port Harcourt, and these are his grievances.
My grievance is doing things the way that it shouldn't happen. For me, I think that the party should do things the right way. The court order is not to stop the primaries. The court order is actually against the processes of the primaries, leading to the primaries and the primaries itself organized by parties.
Before the day winds down, yet another court order and an enrollment order emerged, this time coming from a high court in Ekpoma in Edo State. The court is restraining the People's Democratic Party from excluding Governor Godwin Obaseki and the other cleared aspirants from participating in the Edo State governorship primary. The court ordered that the PDP and the electoral umpire INEC should not exempt any of the aspirants who have been cleared by the party from participating in the governorship primary slated for 25th June 2020. The Edo State PDP chairman believes in the midst of the storm, all is well.
Court action is to stop the governor from participating in the primaries, restricting the primaries to the 3 people that initially bought forms. I wouldn't know whether in the exercise of your right, you have the right also to stop somebody from exercising that same right.
It's a season of court orders and they are pouring in. The PDP is under the spotlight, and how it conducts its primary on Thursday amidst all of these will be closely watched. Shonwa Kimale, Channels Television News.
Ahead of the September 19 governorship election in Edo State, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has been speaking on the plethora of issues relating to the conduct of the exercise. In a statement, INEC's National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education, Festus Okoye, says the conduct of party primaries, including resolution of disputes, will end on Saturday, June 27, 2020. The submission of the list of candidates whom the parties propose to sponsor at the election, as well as affidavits of the validly nominated candidates, will close on Monday, June 29, 2020. The electoral umpire reminds political parties that the spate and tenor of pre-election litigations and the conflicting emanating orders can harm the smooth conduct of primaries and the upcoming polls. INEC, however, insists it will continue to obey all orders and judgments from properly constituted courts in accordance with the rule of law. The National Working Committee backed acting national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Hilliard Etta, has received the report of the Edo State governorship primary election. Mr. Etta, who received the report at the headquarters of the party in Abuja, promised to pass it on to the Appeals Committee. Apparently satisfied with the peaceful conduct of the primary election, he insists that there is no faction within the ruling APC.
Policemen from the Federal Capital Territory Police Command secure the gates with only a few pedestrians allowed into the premises. Earlier in the day, journalists and staff of the party secretariat are prevented from entering the premises. The Federal Capital Territory Commissioner of Police is said to have handed the order of the Inspector General of Police to the APC Chief Security Officer with an instruction that members of the National Working Committee be prevented from accessing the party headquarters. After some hours, the police spokesman explains that the deployment of policemen at the party secretariat is a proactive measure by the police to maintain peace and ensure there is no breakdown of law and order. When the dust over the ceiling of the Secretariat settles, some members of the National Working Committee of the party receive the report on the conduct of the Edo governorship primary election.
Notwithstanding the orchestrated propaganda of atmosphere of fear, hostility, violence in the Edo states, were there what we witness physically was about peaceful existence, conviviality, and togetherness of our people.
The acting chairman of the party applauds the committee for conducting a successful primary.
Let me singularly thank the committee for a job well done. Let me say that the NWC is indeed proud of you.
He takes time out to explain the unusual presence of policemen at the party secretariat.
From the explanation of the police, they got information that certain persons were coming here to foment trouble. So they came here to secure the environment.
Although the Edo governorship election is only a few months away, the crisis rocking the party appears to be far from over.
In the meantime, the leadership of the All Progressives Congress in Ondo State is demanding the resignation of the Deputy Governor, Mr. Agbola Ajayi, for dumping the party for the opposition. According to the Publicity Secretary of the party in the state, Mr. Alex Kalijayi, Mr. Ajayi is no longer a member of the APC and so he should resign as Deputy Governor. He points out that it is on the platform of the APC that Mr. Ajayi became Deputy Governor and not the PDP. And while the party demands the deputy governor's resignation, Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu has sacked 6 aides of Mr. Agbola. The aides relieved of their appointments include the deputy governor's special assistant, special duties, and deputy chief press secretary. A statement from the governor's spokesperson, Mr. Segun Ajiboye, advises the affected aides to submit all government properties in their possession to the chief of staff. Meanwhile, the deputy governor has reappointed all the sacked aides as his personal staff with an instruction to return all government properties in their possession to the appropriate quarters within 24 hours. Away from political matters, the president says he is uncomfortable with the decision of countries in the West African Economic and Monetary Union zone deciding to take up the ECO as its official currency, replacing the CFA franc ahead of other member states. President Muhammadu Buhari made this observation at a virtual meeting with heads of state of the West African Monetary Zone on the implementation of the ECOWAS Monetary and Cooperation Program and a single currency agenda. According to the president, the decision should have been tabled for discussion by all member countries before it was made. He therefore called on member countries to proceed with caution and comply with the agreed process of reaching their collective goal.
We have made remarkable progress, including the adoption of the exchange rate regime, the name and model of the common central bank, and the symbol. We have urged our ministers towards an expeditious path to success. It therefore gives me an easy feeling that the West African Economic and Monetary Union zone now wishes to take up the ECO in replacement of its CFA franc ahead of the rest of the member states. This is in addition to deviating from the Community Act on a consistent attainment of convergence in the 3 years running up to the introduction of the currency and our subsequent reinforcing directives. I am informed that the French ministers have approved a bill to reform the CFA franc, and most, if not all, of the West African Economic and Monetary Union member states have already passed legislations in their various parliaments to that effect. It is a matter of concern that a people with whom we wish to go into a union are taking these major steps without trusting us for discussion.
To diplomatic issues now, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, has described the demolition of the Nigerian embassy residence in Ghana as an attack on the Nigerian state and goes beyond apologies or rebuilding the structure. The Speaker says legal issues surrounding the land should not be settled by a Ghanaian court. He said this at a meeting with the House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs. Our correspondent, Terry Ikumi, has a report.
An international embarrassment. One disrespect too many. That is how lawmakers at a meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs described the demolition of the Nigerian embassy residence in Ghana. Although the Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the action was carried out by non-state actors, for the lawmakers, maybe it's time to kick diplomacy out the window.
Honorable Minister, I think it's about time we took a very huge leap, a decisive measure in ensuring that they regret their action.
If you don't take steps, it will happen again. It's happened in South Africa, it's happened in China, it's happening in our backyard.
In the near future, we may end up closing almost all our embassies or missions all over the world because we are not serious about our foreign relation.
It's like somebody going to the presidential villa and breaking the gate of Mr. President, because every ambassador is representing Mr. President.
The minister updates the committee on how the federal government is handling the matter.
We are now at the stage of establishing the legal status of the property, since there are those who are claiming ownership. We have our own documentation that we are putting together to also assert the ownership.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives joins the meeting midway and describes the incident as an attack on the Nigerian state.
If, peradventure, just for argument's sake, it was the U.S. Embassy that was demolished in Ghana, do we think the U.S. will be talking about apology, will look into it? That's what I want to know. Let's be a little bit more stern, a little bit more aggressive in our approach. The days of being trying to be diplomatic and be a gentleman, I think we should put that aside, especially because there's something in law called recidivist. It's the second time it's happening. If we establish that this is a dispute, it's not a dispute between landowner and a country, it's actually demeaning Nigeria.
He charges the minister to ensure that the case is not taken to a Ghanaian court. And according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the federal government expects that the cost of rebuilding the structure will be handled by the Ghanaian government. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
We'll have more reactions to the demolition of the Nigerian building in Ghana in part 2 after the break. Also, 13 more lawmakers test positive for COVID-19 in Imo State, just as 49 health workers also test positive for the virus in Enugu. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us to watch the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Controversy in Edo PDP as different court orders spring up ahead of the state governorship primary scheduled for Thursday. Independent National Electoral Commission insists it will obey all court orders ahead of Edo election, gives guideline on submission of candidates' names. Leadership crisis rocking ruling All Progressives Congress continues, with police deploying officers around the party's secretariat to avert breakdown of law and order. House of Reps grill Foreign Affairs Minister Jeffrey Onyama over demolition of Nigerian High Commission building in Ghana. Lawmakers say demolition is an attack on Nigerian state and goes beyond apologies or rebuilding structure. And the Ghanaian president apologizes to Nigeria over demolition of the Nigerian High Commission building in Accra. Also a reminder that our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. So taking reactions to the demolition of the Nigerian building in Ghana, Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has apologized to President Muhammadu Buhari for what happened on the premises of the Nigerian High Commission in Accra. A statement from the Nigerian President's Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, confirms that President Akufo-Addo told President Buhari in a telephone conversation that he has directed full investigation into the incident. According to the presidency, some suspects have been arrested and will be arraigned in court. To a totally different issue, the chairman, Senate Committee on Power, Senator Gabriel Suswam, is alarmed at what he describes as the lack of coordination in Nigeria's power sector. Senator Suswam, who spoke to journalists on the sidelines of a public hearing on the power sector, lamented that despite the huge funds pumped into the power sector, there is not much progress in terms of providing sufficient electricity to Nigerians. He also says the sector is insolvent, as government ministries, departments and agencies are owing electricity distribution companies 98 billion naira in electricity bills.
There is a serious misalignment in the power sector. And the reason why, in spite of the huge expenditure, we've been unable to achieve anything has been because there's no proper coordination. And so once there is an alignment, there's proper coordination that yes, if we generate 13,000 and transmission is able to transmit at least 10,000 and discos are able to absorb that 10,000 and there's proper tariff, it makes the sector solvent, the sector become liquid. We're spending huge amount of money paying for debt that is already owed. And you hear 701 billion. These are monies that are paid to money already owed to the generators. So that is not going to add anything. So we must begin to get out of that. Focus on how do we address the issue of the infrastructural deficit in the power sector. Let's spend money on metering. Let's at least meter about 80% of those who are connected to the network, and then be able to collect enough money to make the sector liquid. The problem is the insolvency of the sector. That is what the problem is.
A federal high court sitting in Abuja has fixed June 29th for ruling on the application filed by the former chairman of the Pension Reform Task Team, Mr. Abdulrasheed Maina, seeking a further variation of the bail terms handed to him by the court. The trial judge, Justice Okonabang, fixed the date after Mr. Maina's lawyer to inform the court that the senator representing Borno South, Senator Ali Ndume, has agreed to act as surety for the embattled former chairman. The court had on November 25th, 2019, admitted the former pension chairman to bail at 1 billion naira with two sureties who must be senators. But after several attempts to fulfill the conditions, Mr. Maina approached the court for a variation, and Justice Abang reduced the terms to 500 million naira and one surety. The News at 10 continues now in Abuja, where Linda Akigbe is standing by. Hi, Linda. Always great to see you.
Hello, Amarachi. Welcome to Abuja. Thirteen more lawmakers in the Imo State House of Assembly have tested positive for COVID-19, bringing the total number of the lawmakers who are COVID-19 positive to 14. The chairman of the State Task Force on COVID-19, Maurice Iwu, had announced the first positive case in the State Assembly, saying that samples of the other 26 lawmakers and their aides had been taken for testing. According to the task force, the lawmakers have gone into self-isolation with their families. The State Assembly complex has remained shut down since the first lawmaker was diagnosed with the virus. And in a bid to contain the spread of COVID-19 and enhance adequate treatment of victims in Taraba State, the government has taken delivery of a 100-bed space treatment center. The facility, located at the NYSC orientation camp in Adokola local government area, is provided by Access Bank as part of the coalition against COVID-19. According to the bank, it's a huge burden on the government to be allowed to fight coronavirus alone. The government says it is consolidating its efforts against the pandemic, despite not having any active case of COVID-19 since May the 18th.
This center is further consolidation of the effort of the government to contain the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. Since the first index case was reported on the 27th of April 2020 in Taraba State, government has not relented in its responsibility of taking practical and proactive measures to stop further spread of the highly infectious disease. This administration has also tried to maintain a high level of preparedness for management of case. Medical consumables, including procurement of 4 ventilators for the specialist hospital Jalingo, for protection and case management have been procured, and health staff have also been trained.
From the northeast to the southeast, 49 health workers are said to be among the 144 persons with confirmed COVID-19 cases in Enugu State. Despite this, the government says the health workers have refused to be discouraged and continue to do their best to deliver on their mandates. In the meantime, of the 110 active cases, 29 patients have been discharged and 5 deaths recorded. The Commissioner for Health, Obi Ikechukwu, says the state government is working to identify cases by testing and contact tracing, while it continues decontaminating homes, workplaces and hospitals where identified cases have been. Students in what the Oyo State government describes as critical classes will resume on July the 6th in the state, while teachers will be back in school on June the 29th. The Chief Press Secretary to the state governor, Taiwo Adisa, says the students are expected to wear face masks, while the schools are to prepare well laid out hand washing spots to guarantee regular washing of hands by students and teachers. Mr. Adisa said the state task force on COVID-19 will announce in July whether the remaining classes will be able to resume or wait to resume the new session in September. In neighboring Ondo State, despite the suspension of a nationwide industrial action by the National Association of Resident Doctors, members of a union at the State University of Medical Sciences have embarked on an indefinite strike. The resident doctors lament that they are being forced to down tools because of the failure of government to pay attention to their demands. Their colleagues in the National Association of Government General, Medical and Dental Practitioners in Ondo State government hospitals are also embarking on indefinite strike as from tomorrow.
We are asking that adequate protective equipment should be provided. So we are being given, it's unspeakable, it's not done anywhere where you give a medical doctor closed face mask to be seen patient with. This is not a minimal guideline by NCDC. So we are saying no to that. So henceforth, government management should provide PPE for our members. Number two, we want government and the management to clear all arrears. All arrears dated back to last year. Our May salary should also be paid, and January shortfall should be paid. Number three, we are asking that concrete plan should be put in place for ensuring regularization of salary. This salary has not been regular.
We'll bring you more stories from Abuja when the news at 10 returns. Plus, federal and state governments close to acquiring $3 billion loan from World Bank to cushion the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on the economy. That's in business news. Join us again. You're welcome back to the news at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. Members of the Nigerian Union of Pensioners in Imo State have staged a protest in Owerri, the state capital, over the non-payment of pension arrears and entitlement. The pensioners, in their numbers, took to the streets of Owerri, halting vehicular movement for hours, demanding that the state government pay them their pension arrears owed them since February 2020. The chairman of the Pensioners Intervention Committee in Imo State, Ohaneje Ike, says the union has made several appeals to the government and other relevant authorities in the state to no avail.
Popular Bank Road, Owerri, in the Imo State capital, is on lockdown, resulting in a major gridlock on account of pensioners protesting over non-payment of their arrears and entitlement.
We are begging for arms. We are begging for arms.
The inscription on this pensioners' placard sends a strong message to the government to act in the interest of the vulnerable elderly who serve the government in their most productive years. For them, they deserve better.
We have written to them severally, complaining of our plight, why we were not paid since the inception of this administration. We only paid January and February. You remember he came on board on January 14th, and he paid us January and February. By March, stories started coming out, and we were not paid up till now.
Although it was a challenge for security agencies to manage the situation, the Secretary to the State Government assures the protesting pensioners that their arrears will be paid at the end of the week.
The government is promising before ending of this week, you will get your pensions. It wasn't deliberate. When we came in, we met some problems as regards to pension and pensioners. There was no reliable data who is a pensioner and who is not. However, this is not a period of apportioning blames. We have come to solve problems.
According to the union, about 42 pensioners have lost their lives between February and June this year due to the lack of funds to take care of their medical needs, while some others are in the hospitals over one ailment or the other. All they want is for their pension arrears to be paid as soon as possible.
To the southwest, it appears that residents of Isheri North, Magodo and environs have to brace up yet again as waters from the Oyan Dam will be released next month. The State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Mr. Tunji Bello, is asking residents living in areas that will be affected to relocate before the water comes. Mr. Bello says Lagos will experience more rainfall as the year goes by, but appeals to residents not to panic as the state government will ensure that drainage channels are cleared.
Rainfall sometimes comes with disasters like flooding, which can cause devastation to properties, render families homeless, and lead to loss of lives. Year in, year out, some residents of Lagos State experienced this tragedy. Just last week, Lagos State experienced severe flooding due to the heavy downpour, and the state government says more floods should be expected.
The volume of rainfall will be very high in June, as we have seen. We are in June now, and as we are experiencing, and it will run up to July. But September will also be equally bad. So members of the police are not in sync with the state government on the matter of keeping our drainage channels free from refuse. Those engaging in this unlawful acts to desist from, because if they are caught, we will ensure that they are diligently prosecuted.
The rainwaters often cause dams like the Oyan River Dam in Ogun State to be overburdened, where the waters have to be released, causing flooding of their own, even to neighboring states. This was the experience of some Lagos State residents last year, and they are being told to brace up for more.
In July, we are going to, about 5 million cubic meters of water will be released. While by August, they will release 8 to 10 million cubic meters. But in September, it will increase to 8 million cubic meters of water. While in October, about 23 million cubic meters will be released. So this may have a lot of impact for a lot of, particularly those who live around Isheri, as well as Owode side of going towards Ikorodu.
For the rest of the metropolis, the Lagos State Ministry of Environment says it will continue to clear canals and drainage systems across communities, appealing to residents to dispose their waste properly so the waters can flow.
That's all from Abuja. Back to you, Amarachi.
Thanks a lot, Linda. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, has arraigned one Damian Orogbai before Justice Maurice Ikambese of the Benue State High Court, sitting in Makurdi, the state capital, on a charge of fraud. According to the charge, the suspect dishonestly misappropriated the sum of 1,906 million naira entrusted to him for the purchase of a Toyota Corolla car. The defendant, however, pleaded not guilty when the charge was read to him. Prosecuting counsel requested for a trial date, but counsel to the defendant urged the court to grant him bail in the most liberal terms. Justice Ikambese granted bail to the defendant in the sum of 500,000 naira with one surety, and he adjourned till July 15th for trial to commence. Time for business news. Here's Anne Mawodo.
Thank you, Amarachi, and welcome to Business News. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, says the federal government is close to securing a loan of $1.5 billion from the World Bank later this year. Mrs. Ahmed, who was speaking at the Citibank Investor Update call today, adds that another $1.15 billion is also in the works for state governments. According to her, negotiations are ongoing, and the board of the multilateral lender will meet on August the 6th to approve the facilities. The facility for both state and federal governments is likely to balance funds required to complete the stimulus facility planned as a bailout for the country's economy. The Central Bank of Nigeria says it will continue to pursue unification around the Nigerian autonomous foreign exchange rate for the I&E window. And according to the governor of the Apex Bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, as at December 2019, Nigeria saw a relatively stable market because of NAFEX and CBN rates were closer in value. Mr. Emefiele adds that the disparity between the parallel market and the NAFEX rate is because dealers are mostly not recognized by authorities due to sharp practices while dealing in the market. The federal government says the plans are ongoing to review the prices of domestic gas as it aims to encourage the penetration of liquefied petroleum gas and compressed natural gas in Nigeria. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Mr. Temitope Silva, said this today while inaugurating a committee on gas sector-wide review of the domestic gas pricing framework. He says the move will benefit the manufacturing industry as well as all Nigerians. He also maintained that the committee will review the domestic gas price and the benchmark and make recommendations for appropriate price within 30 days. Mr. Silva also reveals that the flag-off of the Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano pipeline construction has already been slated for June the 30th, and it will be carried out by President Muhammadu Buhari. And still in the energy sector, the preliminary loading program shows that Nigeria's largest crude stream, that's Kwa Ibo, is expected to export 6 cargoes in August, down from 9 cargoes in the month of July. The planned drop, according to traders, reflects Nigeria's pledge to the oil cut output agreed by OPEC and its allies after failing to fully meet its supply cut commitments in the month of May. Kwa loadings will average 184,000 barrels per day in the month of August, down from 215,000 it recorded in July. Meanwhile, the official selling price for Bonny Light and Kwa Ibo crude have been raised to plus 19 and plus 22 cents per barrel, respectively, reflecting a stronger market. The House of Representatives has summoned the Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment, Adeniyi Adebayo, and the management of the Standards Organization of Nigeria to appear before it on Friday for its refusal to audit financial account for 6 years. According to the chairman of the House Committee on Public Accounts, Honorable Wole Oke-San, he also refused to honor several invitations to appear and explain why it had failed to render accounts from 2014 to 2019. He adds that the organization is now holding the Auditor General of the Federation hostage by not rendering its account, and the committee will be forced to invoke the relevant sections of the law. Let's head to the local equities market now. It has continued its bearish run for this week. The all-share index dipped marginally, but improved turnover from yesterday's appreciation. Chimezie Obiwagu has the details for us.
Thank you and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Investors' mood at the equities market remains subdued. Market breadth is still negative. There was wide margin between the number of gainers and losers today. 9 stocks posted gains while 23 declined. However, the gains by MTN, Zenith Bank, Flour Mill and Oando moderated the loss by 2 billion naira. And so when the closing gong sounded, the all-share index ended marginally down 0.01%. The high-value stocks, Bua Cement, Dangote Cement, GT Bank and FBNH were unchanged. I must say, getting the market numbers for today was pretty difficult. Perhaps the Nigerian Stock Exchange is still finding its way with the newly upgraded data portal, which is expected to further improve access to the market. Nonetheless, the moderation we have seen today is indicative that perhaps prices have bottomed out and we may possibly see a reversal tomorrow. And that was the Stock Market Report. I'm Chimezie Obi Iwago.
Thank you, Chimezie. Gains from major tech companies on Tuesday was enough to drive stocks in the U.S. to a fresh record as investors cheered a turn of announcement from the Worldwide Developers Conference. But let's see how all the numbers ended today. Thanks for watching Business News Tonight. I'm Anne Nwawadu. It's back to you, Marachi.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Still ahead on the news at 10, UK pubs, restaurants and hotels could open from July 4th as the country continues easing lockdown restrictions. Plus more stories from our studio in London with Around the World in 5. Please stay with us. Welcome back. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says pubs, restaurants and hotels in the country could reopen as early as July 4th. Mr. Johnson says he's keen to enjoy a visit to the pub and urge people to go out and enjoy the new freedom to socialise next month, cautioning that they will still need to act responsibly. Here's Simon Pusey now with more international news and Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. There are fears of a second wave of the coronavirus in Germany after a large area was locked down due to a new outbreak of the virus. The area of Gütersloh, with around 360,000 residents, is the first in Germany to go back into lockdown after authorities began to lift restrictions at the end of April. More than 1,500 workers at a meat processing plant have tested positive for the virus, plus some of their family members and 24 people with no connection to the plant. Meanwhile, pubs, restaurants, hotels and hairdressers can open from the 4th of July in England, when social distancing rules will be eased. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said people should remain 2 metres apart where possible, but a 1 metre plus rule will be introduced from that date. Meanwhile, Brazil continues to be the centre of the pandemic in South America, with new hotspots being identified in the state of Sao Paulo, as the number of cases soar in the country. Local health officials in the state reported the local health system was close to chaos. Brazil has already passed the number of 1 million cases, second only to the United States, and reported a record 54,000 infections in just 24 hours. President Jair Bolsonaro has been widely criticised for his handling of the crisis. The country still has no permanent health minister after the 2 previous ones resigned. Saudi Arabia has announced it will bar arrivals from abroad to attend the Hajj this year due to the coronavirus pandemic. The ministry that oversees pilgrimages said in a statement it will only allow a limited number of Saudi citizens and residents to make the pilgrimage. This will be the first year in modern times that Muslims from around the world will not be allowed to make the annual pilgrimage to Mecca, which all Muslims aim to perform at least once in their lifetime. And Jacob Zuma has appeared in court facing multiple charges of racketeering, fraud, corruption and money laundering. Zuma is being tried on 16 charges relating to a $2 billion arms deal with the French defence firm Thales in 1999 when he was deputy president. Mr. Zuma rejects all allegations as a politically motivated witch hunt. The French company Thales has said it had no knowledge of any transgressions by any of its employees in relation to the award of the contracts. Malawi has gone to the polls for the second time in 4 months after the Constitutional Court overturned the result of the previous elections in February over systematic and grave irregularities. The previous poll was won by the incumbent Peter Mutharika, but his disputed win sparked popular anger, leading to months of anti-government protests. The vote looks too close to call. Malawi has since ditched its first-past-the-post system, and now the winner has to get more than 50%. China has successfully launched the last satellite of its Beidou navigation satellite system. This final satellite is the 55th of the Beidou constellation, completing a system which experts define being unique compared to other geonavigation systems. The BDS will be China's self-developed global navigation satellite system. It aims to rival the best-known American GPS system. North Korea has started to reinstall loudspeakers blaring propaganda across the border with the South. The system was taken down after the two Koreas signed an accord in 2018 to cease all hostile acts. The South Korean Defense Ministry declared that Pyongyang would have to pay for the consequences if it continues to defy joint efforts to foster peace. 15 inhabitants of an indigenous village in southern Mexico have been killed in an attack labelled one of the most brutal crimes to shake the countryside in recent years. State prosecutors in the state of Oaxaca said the bodies of 13 indigenous men and 2 women were identified as victims of the attacks. According to local authorities, the attackers tortured and burned alive a number of their victims. The 2 women killed had been protesting against abuses by one of the suspected attackers who'd been linked to a local crime boss. And finally, a new Japanese supercomputer has been recognized as the most powerful system in the world. Fugaku, that's the name of the supercomputer, was evaluated by Top 500, a listing of the world's most powerful computers announced by an international conference of experts. Fugaku will be used for climate modeling, biotechnology research, and to simulate nuclear blasts. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
And it's time for sports news. Here's Jeffrey Uzono.
Thanks, Amaracha, and welcome to Sports News. We begin from Nigeria, where the Olympic Committee here joined other national Olympic committees across the globe to take part in the 2020 Olympic Day celebration. The Nigeria Olympic Committee marked this year with Olympians and NOC employees in order to spread the noble ideas of Olympism, bearing in mind the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic. The president of the Olympic Committee, Habo Gumel, said they are quite aware of the various guidelines put in place by the federal government as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. World number 1 Novak Djokovic has confirmed he has tested positive for COVID-19. Croatia's Borna Koric, Grigor Dimitrov of Bulgaria, and Victor Troicki are previously tested positive after playing Djokovic's Adria Tour exhibition tournament in the Balkan region. The Serbian revealed that himself and his wife, Jelena, had both tested positive for the virus after returning to Belgrade from Zaha in Croatia, where the final of the tournament was cancelled following Dimitrov's test results. Pakistan Cricket Board has announced that 7 more players have tested positive for COVID-19 after being screened ahead of their tour of England, taking the total number of players who have tested positive to 10. Fakhar Zaman, Ibrahim Khan, Kashif Zbati, Mohammed Kaviz, Mohammed Hasnain, Mohammed Rizwan and Wahab Riaz, as well as Malang Ali, all have tested positive. Pakistan's test and limited overs were due to fly out later this month for the 2020 internationals. Arsenal have announced that goalkeeper Ben Leno will be out of action for up to 6 weeks with cruciate knee ligament damage. The German landed awkwardly after an aerial challenge from Neil Olpe during the Gunners' 2-1 loss to Brighton and Hove Albion on Saturday. Emiliano Martinez is now likely to become the first choice for Mikel Arteta after playing the role of backup goalkeeper following the retirement of Peter Cech last summer. And Manchester City striker Sergio Aguero is set to undergo surgery on a knee injury and could miss the remainder of the campaign. Aguero was forced off just before halftime of Manchester City's 5-0 victory over Burnley in the Premier League on Monday. Reports say the Argentine is likely to be sidelined between 5 and 6 weeks. The French Football Professional League has announced that a proposal to play a 22-team format next season has been rejected after its General Assembly voted to maintain the usual 20-team format. This means Toulouse and Amiens, who won legal battles to remain in the top flight after being relegated, will play in the lower division next season. The LFP said the decision of the General Assembly is, however, subject to ratification by the French Football Federation. Now, on sports, I'm Jeffrey Uzanga. It's back to you, Amarachi.
And just before we end the news, Benue State has recorded its first COVID-19 death as the confirmed cases rise to 47. The Commissioner for Health and Human Services, Dr. Sunday Onogbabo, says the victim was being managed for other health complications arising from a surgery he had. But a postmortem test conducted on the body came back positive for COVID-19. Of the 47 confirmed cases, there are 32 active cases. 13 persons have been discharged with 1 death recorded, while 1 case was transferred out of state. And the main news again, more controversy trailed the preparation for the Edo PDP governorship primary scheduled for Thursday as different court orders surfaced today. The Independent National Electoral Commission said it will adhere to all court orders. And Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo apologized to Nigeria today over the demolition of the Nigerian High Commission building in Accra. That is the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night.